Home is asking $215,000 less than what Enchanted Lake homes have actually sold for over the past year. 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, an in-ground pool out back, and a gas range in the kitchen that local cooks tend to appreciate. We'll get into all of that, but the number I want you to sit with first is the gap between what this seller is asking and what this neighborhood has actually been paying. 2 separate entrances lead into this home, one toward the kitchen side and one toward the living room side, which gives it some flexibility if you've got guests coming and going without cutting through the whole house. Kitchen, living room, and dining room flow into each other under vaulted ceilings. Open concept, and from the dining area you can already see the pool. Before I get into the data behind that price gap, here's something worth knowing if today's rates are the only reason you're sitting on the sidelines. There are close to 100 homes across Oahu right now, in every price range and every neighborhood, where you can take over the seller's existing loan instead of taking out a new one. Some of them are locked in the 2 to 3% range. I pull that full list twice a month. Click the link below, drop your email, and I'll send it over free. Now about that gap. Enchanted Lake's median sold price over the last 12 months is $1.8 million. This home is asking $1,585,000. A couple videos back, we were in Kalaheo Hillside, another Kailua neighborhood, where the median sold at $1.6 million and homes moved in a median of 13 days. Enchanted Lake is keeping pace right behind it, a median of 14 days, both of them dramatically faster than the island-wide median of 21. If you're buying in either neighborhood, that tells you the same thing. Come in prepared, because homes here aren't sitting long enough for a slow decision. Before we go further, a quick fact about the name on the map. Enchanted Lake isn't actually a natural lake. It's a fish pond Hawaiian farmers worked for generations, later tapped by a sugar plantation to irrigate their fields. In the 1950s, a developer partnered with Bishop Estate, dredged the pond down, and renamed it Enchanted Lake as part of selling the new subdivision built up around it. The first phase alone added a little over 100 lots, and the developers' projects in this area eventually grew to roughly 3,000 home sites, making this one of the larger named neighborhoods on this side of the island. Here's the part that actually matters if you're buying here. Only the homes that touch the lake itself belong to the association that pays to maintain it. This home, and most homes carrying the Enchanted Lake name, aren't lakefront and don't pay that fee at all. If a listing in this neighborhood doesn't mention an association fee, that's not a gap in the paperwork. For non-lakefront homes here, there usually isn't one to disclose. This section is zoned R5, a smaller minimum lot size than some of the neighborhoods we've covered, which is part of why you'll see homes here sitting closer together than in some of the more spread out pockets of Kailua. This home sits on a corner lot, which on a smaller zoning minimum like this one tends to mean a bit more usable yard and a little more separation from one side, without needing the bigger overall parcel some of the interior lots carry. Let's get into what's actually been selling. 33 homes closed in Enchanted Lake over the past year, and I want to walk you through the pattern fastest to slowest because it tells the same story we found in Kalaheo Hillside, just at a different price point. Fastest sale of the year closed in a single day at $2.1 million. Right behind it, a home sold in 4 days at about $2.39 million with a $10,000 concession back to the buyer. 2 more sold in 5 days, one just over $1.2 million, another at $2.5 million. Then a pair worth mentioning together. One sold in 7 days at almost $1.57 million with a $40,000 concession. Another sold that same week at about $1.73 million with a $35,000 concession. 2 different homes, 2 different price points, both needed a credit to get to the finish line in under 2 weeks. A little further out, a home sold in 9 days at $2.5 million, and another closed in 11 days at just over $2 million. On the slower end, one home took 52 days to sell at just over $2 million, and a much larger home took 59 days at about $2.55 million. And the slowest sale of the year took 221 days to close at $2 million, by far the longest hold in this data set, an outlier against everything else that moved in under 3 months. The largest home that sold all year, just under 3,900 square feet, closed at $651 a square foot. A much smaller home under 1,800 square feet closed at over $1,600 a square foot, more than double on a smaller structure. If you're pricing out per square foot in this neighborhood, that number alone can mislead you into thinking a bigger home is the better value. It's the land underneath that's setting the price here, not the square footage of the house. The same story we found across the sold data in Kalaheo Hillside. If you're a buyer, that means the smartest way to compare homes here isn't by size, it's by lot. If you're a seller with a smaller, well-kept home on a decent-sized lot, this data says you're not at a disadvantage against the bigger houses on the block. You may actually be pricing stronger per square foot than they are. And on those concessions, 6 of the 33 sales this year, about 18%, needed one, with credits running anywhere from $8,000 up to $50,000. That's the exact same rate we found in Kalaheo Hillside, 18% on a completely different sample size. Across 2 different Kailua neighborhoods, roughly 1 in 5 sales needed a sweetener to close. If you're selling and a buyer asks for one, that's not a red flag on your listing. It's just what happens in about a fifth of deals here, no matter the price point. One caution on the percent of list number for this neighborhood, which sits at 99.1% over the past year. That figure is calculated off the contract price, and it doesn't fully back out the concessions we just walked through. A sale with a $50,000 credit still shows up in that stat looking close to full price, when the seller's actual effective number landed lower once that credit is factored in. If you're a seller pricing off headline percent of list numbers alone, it's worth asking your agent to pull the concession-adjusted version too. Now, a look at what happens when a home doesn't move at the original price. Quick definitions, since these terms get used loosely. A canceled listing is one the seller or agent pulled before it sold, usually to reprice, adjust terms, or take a break. An expired listing ran out its contract term without selling and was never renewed. Neither one means the home is gone for good. One newly built home in this same neighborhood, finished in 2025, listed just under $2.4 million and sat until the contract ran out unsold. It came back on the market at a lower number, sat again, and expired a second time without a buyer. 2 attempts, 2 expirations, and even new construction couldn't get it done at that price. Contrast that with another home nearby that listed at just under $2.3 million, sat 55 days, and got pulled. It came back $135,000 lower, sold in just 14 days, and needed a small concession to close. Same neighborhood, same year. One repriced correctly and sold fast. The other tried it twice and still couldn't find a buyer. A third home followed that same pattern, a cut of roughly $34,000 the second time around, and it's still sitting off market today after 2 failed attempts. If you're selling here, the lesson isn't cut the price and it'll sell. It's that the market tells you fairly quickly whether your number is close or not, and homes that listen to that signal early tend to do far better than the ones that try the same price twice. Let's talk about supply, because it explains a lot of what we just covered. Months of supply tells you how long it would take to sell through everything currently on the market at the current pace, if nothing new got listed. Under 3 months, that's a seller's market. Enchanted Lake is sitting at 1.7 months right now. Kalaheo Hillside, for comparison, is even tighter, at exactly 1 month. The rest of Oahu is sitting at 3.6. Both of these Kailua neighborhoods are running at less than half the island's supply, which is a big part of why homes here aren't lingering. One more thing worth knowing if you're tracking a neighborhood like this yourself. The rolling average for homes for sale here, the kind of number that averages activity over a trailing period, currently reads about 6. But if you pull a live snapshot today, the actual count is 13, more than double. That's not a contradiction, it's 2 different measurements. One is an average over time, the other is what's on the market this second. That jump lines up with something else in the data. New listings here have picked up sharply the last few months, up nearly 80% over the past quarter compared to the same stretch last year. More sellers are putting homes on in Enchanted Lake right now than they were a year ago. If you're a buyer who's been waiting for more to choose from, That trend is moving in your favor. If you're a seller, it means more company on the market than you might expect walking in, which is exactly why pricing inside the range the neighborhood is actually trading in, the way we just covered, matters more now than it did a year ago. Since we're talking about what's actually available right now, there are 13 active single-family listings in Enchanted Lake as I'm putting this together, ranging from just under 1.4 million up to 3.75 million. This home at just under 1.59 million is the fourth lowest priced of that group. If you're a buyer comparing what's actually on the market this week rather than what closed months ago, that's useful context. This listing sits toward the accessible end of what Enchanted Lake currently has to offer, not the top of it. Here's a pipeline number worth knowing if you're wondering how reliable an accepted offer actually is in this neighborhood. 35 homes went pending here over the last 12 months, and 30 closed in that same rolling window. Most of the gap between those two numbers is just timing. Deals that went pending near the end of the window and haven't closed yet, not deals that fell apart. That's a healthy sign for a buyer trying to gauge whether an accepted offer here is likely to actually make it, and for a seller wondering whether accepting an offer means the deal is basically done. Back to this specific home, 4-bedroom split, 2 and 2, a bathroom on each side, and a layout that gives you some flexibility if you've got guests staying over or need separate living spaces without redoing the whole floor plan. An outback storage sheds already in place. On the numbers, this home was renovated in 2021, kitchen and both bathrooms, which several of this year's sold comps don't disclose having done. At $1,126 a square foot, it lands close to similarly sized homes that already sold this year. Not an outlier once you're comparing apples to apples on size. And the land underneath carries the vast majority of the county's own assessment on this property. Just over 1.25 million of the roughly 1.6 million total assessment is land, with the structure itself accounting for under $360,000. It's close to 4/5 of the value sitting in the ground. The same land over structure story we've now confirmed twice in 2 different Kailua neighborhoods. Monthly property taxes on that assessment currently run a little over $400. One more public number worth knowing. The current owner bought this home a little over 4 years ago for about $1.35 million. So here's where that leaves us. Enchanted Lake's median sale price is running about $200,000 above Kalaheo Hillside's, but with nearly double the supply cushion, 1.7 months against 1. Both neighborhoods are selling in around 2 weeks. Both are landing within a point of full asking price, and in both, the homes that don't move quickly are consistently the ones priced outside the range the rest of the neighborhood is actually trading in. This home, asking $215,000 under its own neighborhood's median, is priced inside that range, not outside it. If today's rates are the only reason you're hesitating in a market moving this fast, don't start with the house, start with the loan. There are close to 100 homes across Oahu right now where you can step directly into the seller's existing rate instead of taking out a new one at today's rates. I pull that full list from the MLS twice a month, so it stays current. Click the link below, drop your email, and I'll send it over free. I'm Aksana with Island Living Oahu. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.